Okay, well, thank you very much. And thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about um, the ESD's 11's ambulance service that'll be going into service on September the 4th. Um, and so I'm extremely excited about the future of that. Um, just a little bit about myself so you can have some background. I've been in EMS for 42 years, going on 43. Um, got in the business because my mother started an ambulance service down in Lake Jackson, south of here, and so I'm sort of from this region. Spent most of my paramedic career actually in Montgomery County, working as a paramedic and a number of positions there from about 1984 to right at 2000. And then I've been moving around the country with a company for about another 10 years. Most of that up in the north, so Ohio and Kentucky. And then I moved over to South Carolina and Georgia and sort of finished up with that company there, running all of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina for them. I then moved to Kansas City, where I ran the Kansas City district there, which provides the governmental entity provides the EMS services there. And then about 5 years into that, there was a decision to integrate that system into the fire department. So we worked to complete that. I then went to work for another private company nationally for another 4 years. And then I took over the Fort Worth system, where I sort of ended my career there as I retired from there and here this last year in 2020. So it's been a great career and I've absolutely loved it. It was great getting back to this area as this job came available, and my wife suggested that I go find something else to do besides stay at home. So I'm happy to be here back in the area. I'm very familiar with the area. I'm familiar with all the services that are in this area, and sort of grew up as a paramedic here working with the folks at Cypress Creek. I have a lot of friends that grew up in that system and have moved on, but certainly very familiar with them. So the upside is I'm very happy to be here and look forward to making sure that the ambulance service that we put in place is equal to and then find those places where we can make it better as we move forward with this service in the future. So that said, let's just talk a little bit about what our plans are. And we have the district has purchased some property over on Stubner Airline Road, 18334 Stubner Airline Road, and it's sort of hard to see. It's right across from the Mud District. There's a lot of shrubbery that sort of mask the property from the highway, but if you were to go back behind that, you would find 43 acres and probably 130,000 square foot of existing buildings on the property. And so we are currently in the process of renovating those properties for administrative offices for the district to include where we would have meetings, but all the ambulance operational pieces, which will include a new communications center, a new 911 communications center. It will include billing center as well, because we'll be doing our own in-house billing. The property will also include a deployment center, which I'll talk about a little bit more, and a fleet maintenance facility here on site. The buildings will be done in phases. So the phase one of this remodel includes the new communication center and the administrative side, as well as the deployment center and fleet maintenance. All that is included in the first phase. The second phase of the build out will include some additional structures. We're adding some service features like a car wash, and the administrative side of our offices will get renovated during phase two of this. So pretty big project. It's estimated that the whole remodel piece will be somewhere in the $20 million range. And that sort of will take care of facilities. The secondary piece of that will be capital investment. So we're buying 40 new ambulances and all the equipment that are necessary for those ambulances. These will be very similar to the ambulances that you see today, in that they're Fords, a little different in that they'll all be gasoline and as opposed to diesel. Gasoline is a little cheaper than diesel, and they will also be hybrids. So there'll be electric components to the ambulance as well that will allow them to, when they're parked at hospitals or posting at places, to shut down and run off battery power. So obviously that helps with the economics of fuel, but it also helps reduce the carbon footprint. So we're pretty excited about that. The ambulances also have some solar panels on the top, which helps with the electrical load that the ambulances will have. Our focus is really a lot on the employee side of this. So as we look to bring on personnel to fill all the slots we have, our focus will be around their needs. To that end, we're going to have a peak staffing of ambulances of 28 on the street. Today, the system produces about 18, 19 trucks on the street on a 24-hour basis. This will be peaked at 28. And what I mean by that is demand for ambulance service in here is so different than most any place else, is sort of a bell-shaped curve. So you sort of start out in the morning where everybody, wakes up and then begins to move around and go to work. And people are fairly predictive in that they go to work the same way, they stop at the same Starbucks every morning, and they sort of wreck in the same intersections trying to get to the Starbucks every morning. So it's very predictable and can be sort of modeled in a production sort of manner, so that you have the resources you need when you need the resources, and then you have fewer resources at night and early mornings when you don't have as much activity. So you'll see a low of about 18 ambulances in the system at some point, but you'll have a peak of 28 trucks during the high call volume times of the day, and then that will dwindle off again at night, and it repeats every day. So that said, we have to hire people to do that, and our focus is currently on the people who have been servicing the district for all these years, and so our intent is to honor their seniority or their contribution to the district for however many years they've been doing that, and that means something to them because there are pieces of bidding shifts and what shifts you get and that sort of stuff that require seniority to get it, and so we're going to be honoring that. All of those folks are at least the EMTs and paramedics pieces of that are guaranteed employment. We're also guaranteeing their rate, whatever their current rate of pay is. Um, we are recognizing that. Um, and we've built in all the other benefits that you would expect from a system, the insurances, the retirement plan. The upside for these employees as to what they have today is it'll be on part of the state retirement plan, um, which will give them a real opportunity at the end to work a long career and be able to retire at the end. So our focus truly is on the employees, trying to give them the best equipment and the best environment to be able to do the job that they do. Our medical control is a gentleman. Our medical director is a gentleman from the Woodlands, actually, Dr. Casey Patrick, who has been the associate medical director for Montgomery County Hospital District for a while now. He will be our permanent medical director. And so it'll be nice to have someone in the area and someone who is very engaged in the philosophy of medicine that will be here in our service area. This will be an all ALS service as it is today. And what that means is there'll be at least an EMT and a paramedic on every ambulance. They will get the training that they have always received, and then we're working to upgrade that training with the upgraded equipment that they'll be using. Every ambulance will have the latest in cardiac technology, the monitors that they're using. Every ambulance will have vents and this stuff called CPAP and BiPAP and IV pumps, and just everything that you could ever need in an ambulance to provide the levels of service that are required at any given time will be available to them. So we're pretty excited about being able to do that, which I think will enhance the level of service that the community currently gets. Not that the level of service, there's anything wrong with the level of service, but it does fill some gaps that I think need to be employed. The ambulances also will have an auto load feature, which is something that if you were to see the ambulances today, when you put the stretcher at the back of the thing, it reaches out and actually grabs the stretcher and lifts it and pulls it into the ambulance so that the crew doesn't have to. That's a safety feature. It will certainly help reduce the number of injuries we have relative to lifting very heavy persons into the ambulance as we move on. So again, as much focus as we can possibly have on employee safety and employee features is our focus. And the reason for that, we believe, is if you can create a good environment for the employees, then they will create a scenario by which the care that's delivered each and every day is exceptional. And so our job is to make sure that they have the opportunity to do that. From a level of care, there's been lots of talk about, will we be reducing the levels of care in the community? And the answer is no. That's not the intent. Our protocols and our levels of care are all backed by protocols that are very standard protocols, medical protocols for the industry. They're evidence-based, which means they have the backing of science and medicine behind them. The philosophies can be different. As you can imagine, in medicine, people have different thoughts about how you achieve different goals. The number one issue, and I just want to be transparent, as we will always be with the community. I've been asked about if we were going to use blood products, and we are going to use some technology and medications that are different and are not available to the community today, but are more science-based than just using blood products. So what you can expect is that we'll have more clotting factors. There's two ways to go about that if you're bleeding, and that's one, is you can continue to try to fill the tank, and that's certainly important in the case of somebody bleeding, but the other is to stop the bleeding in the first place. And our focus is about stopping the bleeding and using products that have been tried and tested in the military and in other services around the country relative to trauma and how we will handle that. We're also using some new products that are just coming out on the market that will, in addition to the TXA, that's the drug that we'll be using for that, will be enhancements to that. So the point is, we're going to be doing things that will be different, but they'll be still cutting edge and moving forward, and we will always continue to do and be part of the research projects for that. I think that what I'd really like for people to understand is that our focus, and my only focus here, is to put together the ambulance service and make sure that we put ambulances in front of addresses with competent, caring folks every single day. The good news is there's already a cadre of people who do that every day. So there's a good legacy of that in this community. There's no reason to think that that should ever go away. As I said, a lot of those folks have been, near and dear to my career. We need to find a way to build on that legacy, not tear it down. So that's our focus as we move forward. I would love to have the opportunity to show the facility off, and we will have an open house as soon as the construction is completed. All of this is slated to be done. The phase 1 construction is slated to be done by August the 16th. All the new ambulances will be here between now and September 1st, provided, again, in all transparency, I'm sure you've read about some of the issues with microprocessors and Ford chassis. So we're working with Ford now to try to resolve getting our chassis delivered to our ambulance manufacturer so that they can guarantee those ambulances. We've been guaranteed enough that we can assure that we'll be up and running on September the 4th. There may be a few stragglers from that we'd be using for backups, but we're pretty confident that at this particular moment that we're going to have the resources we need, all the resources we need to do that. We've started hiring this last week, as we're about 2 weeks into hiring now for most of our positions, and I will say that amazingly, we've had about 1,500 applications to date for all of our 12 positions that we're hiring for. So we've had a good turnout of applications. The pool is pretty deep to select from. But again, on the EMT and paramedic side, our preference and we're giving preference to the people who have been placed on who have been serving this community all along. So let me pause there and start taking some questions from folks who would like to know more.
If you've got questions for Doug, please enter those into the Q&A function on the bar below. We don't have any in the queue just yet, so start typing away, folks. Let me, in the interim, let me ask a few questions. can you talk a little bit about the locating of the ambulances? How will they be? How many will be? Different stations will you have, and whereabouts will they be placed?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. So we are adding a lot of new technology. So the ambulances are tracked via automatic vehicle locators, GPS in their ambulances. The computer-aided dispatch that sort of controls that network has two functions. One, it has artificial intelligence in it. So as we go along and run calls in our day, it sort of learns patterns of where calls occur and what time of day they occur. And so it sort of remembers that. And then it creates a live picture for the dispatchers of where things might occur. So it's sort of like a Doppler radar if you were looking at weather. The other side of it is predictive analytics. So it takes that information that it's collecting and predicts events. It's not like it predicts you're going to have a heart attack, but based on history, it will be able to predict an area that we have high volume in by hour, day a week. And that's where we'll put ambulances during those times. Now, most of all of those places where you'll see the ambulances will be at fire stations. So we're working with all the fire departments to utilize their facilities for permanent places. So there'll be 10 ambulances that are permanently assigned in fire stations, and they're scattered throughout our district, which is 177 square miles. And then on top of that will be 18 trucks that are peak deployed, but they also will be at different fire stations throughout that 177 square miles.
Great. Okay, we have a couple of questions come in. Where would you recommend an interested person to get training to become a paramedic?
So that's a great question. And the Lone Star community colleges, most of the community colleges have training opportunities and courses. That's the best place to go to get your entry level and more advanced level training.
Great. I don't understand this question, but maybe you do. Please tell us about Logis, L-O-G-I-S.
Logis.
Logis.
So Logis is the computer-aided dispatch. It is the central nervous system, if you would, of our system. It controls all of the ambulances and communicates with the ambulances on where to go. It controls mapping. So they'll have, much like in your car, when you go to navigate, when they get a call, it will navigate them to the call, giving them turn-by-turn directions, left, right. And it uses the same mapping systems as the commercial maps like Chevrolet or Ford or anybody else. It also integrates with Google and some of the other traffic sensory, so it knows which routes are best and which routes are crowded, so that we can minimize the amount of time it takes for someone to get there. And as I mentioned earlier, it has this artificial intelligence as well as this predictive analytics. It is also integrated with our billing system. The billing system is also Logis. It's a fairly sophisticated, probably one of the most sophisticated in the country. And the integration is incredibly helpful as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Can you touch a bit on community programs that you will have in place, such as injury prevention, heart and stroke signs and symptoms, et cetera?
Yes, again, great questions. Most EMS systems around the country all have really good community outreach. We're going to continue to work heavily with schools and Chamber of Commerce's and churches and other civic organizations to do the Stop the Bleed training, the CPR trainings, the prevention of, how you can prevent and what to do until the ambulance arrives, that sort of training as well. So I think you will see us out and about. We'll have a whole cadre of people who will be doing that and reaching out to continue to help the community stay healthy. As we get through the provisions of making sure that we're putting ambulances in front of addresses, we then want to, because that's the ambulance service is sort of reactive. You call 911, we then respond to whatever it is that you've asked us to do. The other side of that is how can we be more proactive about helping stop that 911 call in the first place. And so there's a whole thought about a new series of interventions called Mobile Integrated Healthcare, our community paramedics. As we get through this initial phase of getting ambulances where they need to be on time, then we're going to start working on putting so those programs in place to try to prevent people from having events in the first place. So,
wonderful. Thank you for that. This question, I'm going to paraphrase it. What will be done with the equipment from the older currently existing system?
So the district owns, so Cypress Creek owns some of that equipment, and the district owns some of that equipment. The district owned equipment will be brought into the system and evaluated for its useful life. A lot of that has reached the end of its useful life, and so it's being replaced. We have plans. I've met with Klein Independent School District. They have a very robust EMT program that they run in their stuff. We're looking to donate some of that equipment to them to facilitate their training. That might even include ambulances where they could then have resources to actually practice the skills that are necessary to become employed in the industry after that. So we'll have to evaluate the equipment and see what status it's in. We'll try to incorporate the stuff that's in working condition. That's not, we'll either get it to the people who could use it, or it'll be sold in the open market.
Very good. Next question. Since your dispatch center is going to stage ambulances throughout the district instead of at stations, will crews have a base station they will work out of on a shift, or will they be mobile and driving around in between calls?
Yeah, so it's a combination of, there'll be some ambulances that are stationary. So today, all the ambulances are stationary. So if you think back a little bit about my discussion about a bell curve, if you run a static number of trucks, you have more trucks than you need sometimes and not enough trucks at other times of the day because it's just a static number of trucks. There's a lot of research out there today about fatigue, and especially is fatigue and stress that's associated with our industry, and a lot of it has to do with the number of hours that are worked. And so we're trying to reduce the workload on our staff. So most people, the 18 trucks in that peak load will come out of a deployment center here, and they'll work, generally work 12 hours shifts, and they'll work 3 days 1 week, 4 days the next. So a combination, but all that says is they'll work about 42 hours a week. Where they currently work about 48 hours a week. So we're reducing their workload a little bit. But there will be 24-hour shifts as well. So it's a combination of both. And most of the posts that we use, when you talk about people moving around in the system, they do that. That's a pretty common event in systems, EMS systems today anyway, as they have to fill in the gaps that are created when other trucks are catching calls. We'll be using fire stations as those posted locations. So,
okay. Next question. This this person is interested in knowing, would like to know more about the decision to create a new EMS service as opposed to contracting with a additional service or an existing service.
So I think what somebody's asking is why do it yourself versus contracting with somebody else?
Correct.
And there are a number of reasons why. One is that you get a little more efficiency out of a self-operated model. In other words, if your only focus is to provide 911 emergency medical services to a community, that's the only thing that you're focused on, you tend to be more efficient and effective at doing that. You can reduce cost if you pick the right model. So, when I say we're going to put 28 ambulances up, that's with the same number of personnel that are currently putting 19 ambulances up. So you get a little more efficiency if you pick a little better model to do that. And you have better control of assets, the maintenance of those assets, and you're not paying a middle person to provide that, who has to then provide a margin. Everybody here is a business person, so no margin, no mission. So it's a little different when you're a governmental entity and you can do this and break even and keep the cost down to the community as a whole. So it really does reduce the cost, gives you better control, and at the end of the day, hopefully provide an equal to or better service.
Great. Here's a two-part question. How do you divide staff among 12 categories of employees, and what are the pay rates per category of employee?
Well, the pay rates would certainly vary based on what the positions are. And so you have multiple levels of positions for the field. You have EMTs, you have paramedic in charges, you have supervisors, you have operations managers, you have logistics managers, you have communications managers, you have communication personnel. There are just a number of positions that are currently available that you need in order to run a system like this. And the pay rates vary on position based on experience and credentialing required. The pay rates are all very comparable for the area.
Great. Okay, next question. Will all of Cypress Creek EMS facilities remain with Cypress Creek and not be moved to ESD 11?
Yeah. So anything owned by Cypress Creek obviously is Cypress Creek's, and they can do with as they see fit. And I don't know what Cypress Creek's. You'd have to ask Cypress Creek what their intentions are, but anything that's theirs will be available for them to do whatever it is they're planning on doing. And our plan would be, if we can assist them in any manner, we'd be happy to do that.
Great. And on that note, we have, like we've done here with Doug and having him present to the chamber, we have extended the same invitation to CCMS if and when they develop a plan going forward. Next question. How will you be funded? Local property tax ? User pay ? What rates and charges ?
Yes, I appreciate all the question marks. So, so let me just say that it's not any different than it is today. The ESD has a tax rate set. They collect taxes. There is a rate charged for ambulance services. And we bill insurances, the Medicare, Medicaid, third-party insurances, and we bill people who are self-insured as well. So that process will continue just as it has for many, many, many years. The district certainly has taken on some debt as it relates to the capital equipment. I think this total project is about 40 million when it's all said and done, and the rates for that have been pretty reasonable, anywhere from 1.36 to 1.58 or so in interest rates. So the money has been reasonably inexpensive to borrow. And as you probably all know from your businesses, but the upside is the district does not, at least in the conversations that I've been in and had, does not foresee an increase in tax rates. So the tax rate is about not just short of 3.5 cents, which is one of the smallest tax rates of ESDs in and around us. So I think we will bill, and the total operating, so just so you know, the estimated operating is about 30 million a year. Between the two revenue sources, we think we'll collect about 40 million a year. So you'll have a surplus of about 10 million to service debt. And so you can pay off, the district should be able to pay off debt relatively quickly.
Great.
I think that answers all the question marks.
Well, thank you, Doug. That's it for our questions. I appreciate you taking this time to speak to us and our members of the chamber. We want to welcome you back to the community, and we look forward to the work that ESD 11 is going to be doing for us in the future.
Thank you very much, and go to our website, www.esd11.com. There's some podcasts there that explain this information a little bit further, and information there. Or please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions that someone might have.
Wonderful. Thanks, Doug. And I want to thank everybody for coming today. We have a really good turnout. And go to a chamber website, houstonnwchamber.org, to sign up and register for future events. So with that, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you all soon.
Stay safe.